Hi, this is Gary with Aldan American. As you can see, I've laid out all of my Currectrac trailing arms from John Currie Performance Group. We're going to do the installation today on this '69 Malibu. So before we do the installation, let me tell you all about this kit. This is the John Currie Currectrac trailing arms. So the lower arms are billet aluminum. They have a Johnny joint that goes to the front side. They have the original locations for a stock style sway bar. At the rear, it's a urethane bushing that has flutes on the inside so that when you grease it from the bottom, it gets greased throughout the entire bushing for periodic maintenance. The upper arms are adjustable. We have this adjuster in the middle. It's a left and a right hand thread. So at the front frame side, we have this Johnny joint. This is a forged housing with the spherical bearing on the inside with a grease fitting so that you can maintain it and grease it. So at the rear, we have the bearings that go into the axle housing. So this is also a Johnny joint, and what's nice about it is no binding. The rear suspension is going to move around and do exactly what it wants to, but it also will keep the rear end centered in the car like it's intended. The rear bearings also have these bolts that have got grease fittings in them. So what's nice about them is you can grease the bearings so it stays good and squeak free for the lifetime. These trailing arms are made for the 68 to 72 Chevelle because the upper arms are a little bit shorter on the 68 to 72. We also offer them for the 64 to 67. They're a little bit longer to fit just like the factory arms did. And what's really nice about these arms is they locate the rear axle so that it doesn't move around. It has a lot of articulation. The axle moves freely without any binding. Great for drag racing, great for autocrossing, and excellent for a street car. It is a great upgrade for your 64 to 72 A-body GM car. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the tailpipes off. So these tailpipes are pretty easy to come off, and I'm only taking them off to make it easier to do the video. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove the sway bar. Now I'm going to remove the trailing arms. So what I want to do is set this trailing arm next to the new Currectrac John Currie Performance Group trailing arm to show you the differences. It is a factory boxed arm, so it is an improvement over the standard arm. But what's really nice about this arm, it's billet aluminum, and it has a spherical bearing at the front side. It has the provisions for the stock style sway bar and a urethane bushing in the back. It also has grease fittings front and rear so that you can periodically grease the bushings and the bearing. So my next step is I'm going to install the trailing arm, and what I want to do is only do one trailing arm at a time. It makes it a little bit easier so that the rear end stays supported as you're doing the job. If you take all of them off, then you got to balance the rear axle to put the new ones on. We're getting ready to install our upper Johnny joint for the axle housing. And so what I've used is I bought this ball joint installation tool. And so it's basically a big C-clamp with a bunch of different size tubes. I used it to push my original bushings out, and I'm going to use it to install my new Johnny joint. As you can see, using the tool, I didn't end up using my ball joint installer because the tool with the hammer worked great. So when I'm working with adjustable trailing arms, what I always like to do is start off and make sure they're adjusted to stock length. So I take my original control arm, I take and put the bolts in it, and as you can see, out of the box, they're not the stock length. So what I'll do is adjust them. Unfortunately, I had a little bit of a clearance issue on the 12-bolt Chevy with the casting for the differential on the ring gear side, which is the left side. So what I did is I had to do a little bit of grinding, and so what I used this profile and duplicated it to my new arm. There it is. I've now torqued all of my hardware that's half-inch, shock mount, trailing arms, upper lower to 75 foot-pounds, so I'm now ready to put the sway bar on. The next thing I'm going to install is the Performance Online rear 1-inch sway bar. It bolts onto either your stock trailing arms, but you'll have to drill a couple of holes and use the supplied spacers, or the boxed factory control arms, or in our case, we're going to mount it to our Currie arm. So we've installed our sway bar, we've installed our Currie trailing arms, we've installed our Johnny joint into the axle housing, and we're ready to start putting the car back together and be able to go out and drive it and have some fun, see how it all works. For more information about these products or any other Aldan American product, check us out at aldanamerican.com.